Yeah. It goes, it's like a yo-yo.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Heisel?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Teray?
I'm sorry. Did you call my name?
I did.
Oh, I'm talking. Sorry. Here.
Okay. Mr. Anderson?
Here. We were
And
looking for the
Mrs.
flag.
And Mrs. Stockton? Here. Secretary's aye. Dr. Hall?
Aye. Do we have the flag?
Yeah, Daniela was going to retrieve it.
Oh, okay. Okay. We'll still pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We turned the right way.
You gonna put it right there?
It'll catch the echo.
You'll catch
The echo.
Mrs. Nash? Can I see you for 1 minute?
Okay, I think we want to go ahead and do it again since the flag has now arrived.
Sure.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Well, last board meeting, we confirmed that we have settled negotiations with our teachers union. So we're happy to have that completed. And this board meeting, we are happy to say that we have selected a superintendent for the Crete Monee School District. I have sitting next to me Mr. Nathan Cunningham, Jr. After a rigorous national search, Crete Monee School District Board of Education has selected Nathaniel Cunningham, Jr. to the Office of Superintendent of Schools. Mr. Cunningham is a Danville, Illinois native who began his educational career teaching 8th grade science and coaching the high school football and middle school basketball teams. He was formerly associate principal at Rantoul Township High School for several years before becoming principal at Glenwood High School in Chatham, Illinois, where under his instructional leadership, the school was recognized as one of the top 50 high schools in the state. In 2009, Mr. Cunningham joined the McLean County Unit District 5 administration in Normal, Illinois, where he has served as Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources for the past 5 years. Mr. Cunningham possesses so many of the qualities that this Board of Education was really looking for. He knows what it takes to work collaboratively and build systematic programs that improve the culture of schools and has had great success with building capacity from within. We have faith that he will be equally successful in our school district. Please join us in welcoming him to the Crete Monee School District family. Mr. Nathaniel Cunningham, do you have any words of response?
Yes, I am so honored to have this opportunity. My family and I will be moving here, just found that we will have a house in Monee. We are happy to be here, and my youngest will be a freshman this year and will be here at Crete Monee High School. And we're just looking forward to the opportunity to serve, build trust, and work together to continue to improve this outstanding school district. Thank you so much.
And for those of you who weren't at the last board meeting or didn't see it online or have been at the board meetings, you notice some new faces sitting here at the table. So I'm going to introduce to most and reintroduce to some of the new people we have on our district staff. And right here we have Dr. Ann Williams. She is taking the place of Robert Bruce as our Assistant Superintendent of Business. To the far end, we have Mrs. Monica Spence. She is taking the place of Mr. George Elrod as our Assistant Superintendent of Student Affairs. Formerly Director of our Alternative School. Also, Mr. Lyle Neal is taking the place of Dr. Tony Edison as Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, and he's not able to be with us. He is the former principal of Talala, so some of you may know him as well, and he had a vacation scheduled prior to taking this position, so that's why he's not with us tonight. But this is our new district staff. And I have to say that we are very excited about our staff. We have some very hard workers, even with Mr. Cunningham's only being in place 2 years and 2 weeks, and everyone else being in place for 2 weeks. They're already hitting the ground running and doing a lot of things. And I have to say, as board president, I'm very proud of much of the work that you all have done in only a matter of 2 weeks. So thank you all, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I have public comment from Jen Goodman in regards to registration.
Hello? Okay.
Hello.
Hi. I had some, I'm wondering why our registration costs are so incredibly high. We have a really long registration going this year, it seems as well, almost a whole month, but I've got, last year we spent $83,738 on registration. The lowest it's been since 2008 was in 2009 at $69,000. We've been as high as $157,000. We FOIA'd some surrounding districts, with like Peatone, they said we can't provide you that because we don't, it's part of our regular budget. They just do it. The secretaries do it. We adjust their work days. Instead of 9 to 5, they do 1 to 7. Steger has 2 days of registration. They spend $4,900. Orland, they weren't really sure. They didn't understand what we meant because they don't have a budgeted registration. They said the funds aren't an issue, basically. It's part of their employees' regular duties. We got a pretty detailed one from one that had said, for this 2013-14 school year, on July 25th, the offices were open from 1 to 7 for purpose of registration. Our secretaries were scheduled to work anyway. We had them work 1 to 7. So I'm wondering why we have such a huge chunk in our budget allocated for registration costs, and especially when all of the surrounding districts, everything should pretty much be done online nowadays. Why do we need from July 7th to, August 1st, all these days? We've got people that are working registration, posting on public Facebook sites saying, come on in, I've been sitting here for 3 hours, there's nobody here, it's dead here. Why so much time? Why are we spending so much money on that?
I'll address it briefly, and then I also have Mrs. Spence address it. To my understanding, the amount that was given as far as the amount that we spend on registration, I think typically districts do not keep that information, and when the FOIA request came in, I believe Mr. Elrod put that together, and he included, I believe that he proportioned the salaries of people that were already working. So that's where the large amount of money, the bulk of it, is coming from. I don't have that information in front of me as far as the detailing of that, but I think we explained that at the board meeting before last. That's why that was so large. I think Dr. Williams has had some experience with the budgeting of that as well. Maybe she can give some information as well. And then Mrs. Spence. Okay.
I'd be happy to provide you with whatever information we have in the office if you want to contact me.
Sure. Is your email address set up like the rest of the district, the A. Williams A? Okay.
And I think because it's typically not kept by districts, that's probably why you're getting all these varying amounts. It's not necessarily a budget that's specifically allocated. When a FOIA request comes in, this is the amount that when he went back and he researched, this is what we paid.
Yeah,
as far
because
as
when
that.
we had asked for what is the total cost of registration, and we were getting anywhere from $4,900 to one of them was $583, and that was for copying fees. Another one was $2,500 for copying fees, but the rest of them really don't have any costs, whereas we had such astronomical, close to $100,000 costs with all the financial trouble with the state never paying and everything else. If we could find a way to cut that down,
And again, like I said, it depends on how they put the numbers together. Mrs. Spence.
Okay. Is this on? I can continue. Okay, I can speak for. Okay. I can speak for the length of time of registration. I know that's been ever evolving. Before, when we had registration later, we had a high number of families registering late. And so then we increased the amount of time. I mean, we have talked about how 4 weeks is seeming like it's a little lengthy. I mean, if you give them 4 weeks, they'll take 4 weeks. However, it was originally lengthened to encourage families, just to give them more time to come in, because if you may remember, years past, we did have problems with people registering late. And then also the second part with Dr. Williams and Mr. Cunningham they've already asked me those same questions. With them coming in new, Dr. Williams has definitely been doing her due diligence with looking at costs across the board with everything. And then Mr. Cunningham has already had a conversation with me about once we get through this registration process, because right now it's too short notice to try to change anything, but once we get through this, sitting down and coming up with some ideas on how to make it a little more streamlined, a little more efficient, and even cutting some of the costs, okay?
Yeah, and just one more thing. Before my mom just retired from there, what they finally did to cut a lot of their costs down was they used to have a 2 to 3 week registration. They got it down to 2 days. If you're not registered by the end of that second day, you're paying an extra $100. Everybody's registered in 2 days. So it's just something to throw out there, kind of like late fees at places, You'd be surprised how people do it if they have to pay more. Thanks.
Thank you.
Jim, we're going to leave it to you to encourage a few people, because the other thing I can recall in all the years we've been sitting here, a lot of people have complained about the shortness of, even 2 years ago, about the shortness of registration. So we got to find some balance, and of course, and it's all about accruing the income, obviously in a timely fashion, but certainly there needs to be a balance, because people clearly had an issue with the shortened time span when we attempted that too. So we've got to work it out.
Thanks.
And I'll say too, Jen, of course they're going to be looking at, making a lot of things a lot more proficient in the district. I know that a couple of years there was major concern. The year before last, there was major concern with registration and how, it panned out. And I know Mr. Elrod really sat down with his team and really tried to make it where it was, accessible for parents. And remember, we had the whole committee that parents sat down and gave input as to how registration would be better. And so a lot of that came out of those conversations. But again, we're still looking at the best ways to do it.
And it's probably all the people that have complained are the ones that haven't registered yet, and have all these employees sitting here twiddling their thumbs, doing nothing, saying, God, I'm so bored, I wish people would come in and register. And I could probably guarantee that all the people that were whining about it will wait till the last day. So I guess if they know they have to register their kids, they'll do it. So.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next, Carol Millsap, grant money.
Hello, I'm just asking for an update on the grant money. Where are we with that? What have we used it for, and what will we be using it for, and is there kind of like a time frame?
Can you verify which funds you're referring to?
The 23 million that we just got?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Turn it over to Mr. Brown.
I probably can't pinpoint it to the dollar, but basically we expended $500,000 to initially get the grant. We had to spend that for what they call wetland that we incurred and acquired when we built the new school. And then we expended a little over $1 million. We abated money back to the taxpayers, and $250,000 for emergency boiler repairs or replacement at Balmoral School. And the last thing was the negotiating of the teacher's contract. We initiated a stipend, and that probably was, I don't know, almost $1 million, about $1 million close to. So we should be right around $20 million. So
the stipend is for?
That was part of the negotiating of the teacher's contract.
Okay.
We handed out, and I don't want to say handed out, we negotiated a stipend as part of the closure of the contract.
And are there definite projects or things that are happening that are going to be used with the money? Are we going to improve or fix, or where is that standing? Where's the
Yeah,
20?
right now we are looking to carry on with some projects. We're going to revisit on how we're going to fund those projects. Initially, we said we was going to expend of that capital development fund about $10 to $11 million to expand the middle school. That was approved, I don't want to say approved, but recommended by the Finance Committee, never went to the full board. And in that time span, since we did meet at that Finance Committee, there's some other dynamics that occur, but we're going to revisit that to see how we're going to fund things, because, that money could go real fast.
Yeah.
So, right now we got a lot of things going, a lot of moving parts when it comes to how we getting funded from the state and so on and so forth. So we got to be very careful on how we expend those funds.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, and we will let the public know moving forward with the new business manager, Dr. Williams, and others. We're going to be talking about this. I just shared with her just a little bit about a week ago what we have going on. But we are moving forward with doing things with our schools.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Last public comment, Mary Bragg. Welcome to new administrators. CMEA President.
Good evening. I'm Mary Bragg. On behalf of the Crete Monee Education Association, I'd like to welcome our new administrators, Superintendent Cunningham, Dr. Williams, our administrators to new positions, Mrs. Spence, and to our tried and true, Laura Hirsch, who's been here with us in curriculum and instruction. We look forward to working together to build this district into a great district and work collaboratively to move things forward after these past negotiation sessions. So welcome to the district and look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Okay, board updates. I already introduced the new superintendent. Any other board updates? Okay, administrative updates. Curriculum.
This is our annual report on supplemental educational services that we're required to provide under Title I for our 3 Title I schools, which are Crete, Balmoral, and Talala. This past year, well, let me back up a little bit. What we do there is, we connect with providers, private providers that are approved by the State Board of Education, and those providers then let us know if they are interested in servicing our students, and we send information out to parents and make that connection. And then what the district does is they're required to set aside 20% of their Title I funds for those services, which last year we set aside $199,949. And each student then is allocated a certain per pupil amount, which last year was $1,053.47, and they can expend up to that amount for after-school tutoring by the provider of the parent's choice. That gives us, and I know we've discussed this in previous years about maximizing this. This gives us a capacity of 189 students using, doing the math with the per pupil allocation. Sorry about that. Say that 10 times. So this past year, we had 2 sessions. Our first session, we had 111 students participate, and we utilized 16 providers. And then our second session that began at the end of February, we had 59 students participate and 15 providers. We also partnered with both of our Crete and University Park libraries in order to make sure that students and families had access to those applications. We served in all 170 students, and we expended $162,033.22 with that. Each provider is required to pre- and post-test students, so we get information from the providers as to how the students are doing in those programs, and it's provider-specific, so there's no common assessment that goes across the board for those providers. We do ask and we do look at their data, and based on what they gave us, 77% of students who were pre- and post-tested showed growth from the first test to the second test. It's always nice to have a common assessment, so what I did this year was I looked at our NWEA MAP scores for our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. Next year we'll be giving that assessment to our 1st and 2nd graders as well, but I wanted to look at this particular assessment because it is a growth assessment, so it allows us to see how students are growing over time. And what it does is give us a projected growth for our grade levels. So we test students in the fall. The program then tells us how many points of growth is projected for that group of students. And what we did was we compared the projected growth versus the number of students who actually hit that projected growth target. So in your board packet, what you'll see is 3rd grade reading math, 4th grade reading and math, 5th grade reading and math divided up into each of our 3 schools. And you can see what those projected growth, or the percent of students that met that projected growth target and the percent of students that didn't. What I will say is it's very difficult to get an exact growth measure on these students because there are so many factors involved in their growth. What is it? Is it SES? Is it what's happening in the classroom? Is it what's happening during intervention? There are a lot of factors there, so to isolate it gets to be a little bit tricky. But we certainly wanted to report back to you and also give you some data on the growth of students who are in that program.
I got a couple of questions. When I'm reading the data here, it's showing like Talala 5th grade math, 25% met the projected growth, 75% did not. That's kind of alarming to me. I would think 50-50 would be probably more realistic. That's some pretty heavy numbers. What caused that problem with math?
Well, that's only for that group of students at Talala that participated in SES tutoring, which I don't have that exact number in front of me, but the projected growth was 8 points of growth on the NWEA map. So we basically, in order to simplify this, we looked at the number of students from Talala in 5th grade that took this assessment and participated in SES, and out of that number of students, 25% of them met that growth target of 8 points and 75% did not. That didn't mean that they didn't get any growth. It just meant that they didn't hit that 8 points of growth.
Because it's pretty common. Crete, 30% met, 70% didn't. Balmoral, 42%, 57% didn't. It's, math seems to be the highest percentage of not meeting projected growth. And for me, can you please, NWEA, what does it mean in English?
It's an acronym for a company, Northwest Evaluation Assessment, or
Okay.
not exactly. I know it's Northwest Evaluation, and I can't remember what the A is, but because we call it NWEA. MAP
Okay.
is a measure of academic progress, so
Okay.
it's an abbreviation.
It's a company, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you. It just concerns me that the math scores are so lower, so much lower.
Well,
When
and if you
when I
look
read the
here-
reading, it's pretty much
Right, and it was fifth grade math that has the lower scores, because if you look at fourth grade's a little bit closer to the 50-50
Right.
at one building, but in two buildings, but some of its fourth grade at Balmoral was significantly higher. And again, if you drill down to it, it really depends on how many students it was, who the students were, where they're starting from, and there is an individual report on all of these kids, but we just are trying to take a lot of data and put it into a much more simplified form.
Would you repeat who these students are again?
Sure.
I think it's important that you hear that. We're not saying that it's not important, but we need to know who these students are.
Well, the students that participated have to qualify to be in SES tutoring, and they're students that attend our Title I schools and meet the low income requirements for Title I. So it's basically it's low income students, and again we match the provider to the students, but it's based on parent selection, and the parents make the determination about who the provider is going to be and whether it's going to be reading or math services. So we just facilitate that process.
So basically what I'm hearing is these students who are identified get to choose a provider of tutoring
Of their choice.
and you're trying to take a look at how successful these kids are being on a common assessment so that you have an idea of what kind of bang we're getting for our buck.
Correct.
We're reporting that so that information is available.
Because the providers will provide us the assessment on their test, which each provider uses a different assessment. So we wanted to look at one of our common assessments, and I picked this one specifically because it is a growth assessment. It's our first year for doing this. So I thought this was the best one because we had both a reading and a math measure on an assessment that measures growth.
Correct.
And
Thank
this
you.
was requested by the board because we know that this is something that's being provided to these schools, but we also wanted to see, how our students are faring with access to these types of programs. So that's why the information is being presented as well.
So, Laura, you said something to the fact that there's no commonality between the tutoring firms,
Correct.
companies. What about, how do we measure success from that company? Is it just based on the students' achievement? Or what if the students, like looking at some of these scores, do we still bring in those tutoring companies? Do we say that they did not give us our requirement or what we wanted, or do we just move forward with the companies?
All of the companies are approved by Illinois State Board of Education. So they provide us with a list of approved providers. And those providers decide whether they're going to be available to service any school in the state, whether they're going to service schools in a particular county. So for us, it would be Will County, or whether they're going to service a particular district. So we get a list of about 100 providers.
Okay.
And then what we do is contact them and ask, are you willing to service students in Crete Monee School District? They respond to us, and if they say yes, then we print out information for the parent. We give them a summary of what the services are that each company provides. Some are in person, some are online. I mean, they have a variety of services. We give that information to the parents. The parents then analyze the information, and then they determine which providers they would like for their student to have. And they give us a first, second, and third choice. And then what we do is look at how many students we have per provider, and we then contact the provider and say, we have 10 families that are interested in your services. Will you serve 10 families? Sometimes they have a certain number of students that they must have in order to provide services, and they'll give us a yes or a no. And then if it's a no, we go to the second choice. So we're partnering these parents with these companies. We don't have any control over, we don't have any control over the services that they provide, other than the fact that they're approved by the state. And if we have a major problem, then we can give information back to the state and let them know that we had an issue with that provider.
What are we spending? About $120,000 roughly dollars?
This
Title I money.
This
is where we're
past
getting
year
it.
was $162,000.
$160,000 plus. So, and is the tutoring being performed in the house the homes?
It can be in a lot of places. We have,
All over.
basically, we have 2 or 3 providers that will come into the schools and do it on site.
Okay.
Some meet at the library, some have private facilities, some are online. They all have a different mode of delivering the tutoring services. And that's part of the attraction for parents, because depending on their circumstances, they may want something later in the evening, they may want something in the home, and that's the choice that they have, is to find the provider that fits their situation and select from that list.
Where does the teacher come and play here? I mean, you know, parents may say, I want my son to go to Harvard, you know, and the kid can't make it at Harvard, you know. Is there a part to this puzzle that the teacher says, here's what I think is the best for your child to succeed here? Because they're with them every day. I mean, aren't they part of this process? Or?
Well, you know, you would hope parents would ask teachers for feedback. There is an individual learning plan that each company prepares on each student, and they will send that to the school so the school can see what the company is working on with that student. But as far as maybe direct input as to which provider, or whether it's reading or whether it's math, that's entirely up to the parent.
And this service is supplemental and it's optional.
Correct.
So it's in addition to what I'm sure all of the many things that teachers are doing in the classroom.
And that's what makes it so difficult to determine the actual impact of the tutoring services, because a student could be getting extra support during the day. They could, you know, they have what the quality of instruction they're having in the classroom. I mean, there are a lot of factors that go into it. So it's really hard to isolate the after-school tutoring and say,
absolutely,
this is what is causing a rise.
It is, but you know, it doesn't hurt to, at least if there's some level of complacency with these tutoring firms, to share this information and say, you know what, this is what we got. If all of the tutoring firms would see something like this and says, you know, we got to step up our game in some capacity.
But
now, this is the
what
first.
She's saying, and I believe what you're saying, Laura, is we're asking for numbers on growth,
Right,
but
right.
that growth can be attributed to multiple factors.
Correct. Yes,
because specifically,
And
you can't say it's attributed to,
Right.
you know,
One-
the fact
one
that they're
entity.
in a, you
And
know,
I believe what Mr. Brown is saying is
Yeah.
he's looking to see if we have some measure of input over the quality of
Oh,
the
the quality.
services.
Oh, yeah.
And basically what the state says to us is if you have a complaint, there's a process for filing a complaint. But they're the screeners
They're
of the
state
program.
approved.
And
Yes.
again, I'm not saying that I'm complaining at the vendors, but all I'm saying is if the vendors are being complacent in some capacity, that, hey, maybe this could drive them a little bit to provide us with that much better service. And it's just more than the vendors that's involved with here. You got parents and the whole shebang here. But I'm just saying what we're paying $160,000 plus for. And this is the first time that you have gave us data like this, right?
No.
With growth.
It's the first time I've used this
This
assessment.
This assessment.
the-
Okay.
Can I
Okay.
ask, does the state rank them at all? Do you get any reviews or anything? What we could possibly do is have our parents fill out a survey, letting us know.
And there's a couple of things
Feedback.
to keep in mind, or new information. I mean, we do get feedback from parents periodically, but
Okay.
a survey is a great idea. The other thing is that for this next year, because NCLB is now gone by the
No longer.
wayside,
No longer.
this is actually now not a mandate for next year. I mean, I'm not saying it's something that we shouldn't consider doing, but certainly for close to $200,000, I think we need to look at what we can do with that money that maybe will give us more control over the quality of the product that we're.
I'm sure there'll be another replacement mandate.
I have a question, Madam President, to Ms. Hirsch. Who comes up with the projected growth percentage should be?
That comes out of the assessment company.
Okay.
They do that.
Okay.
Just one last question from me is how many students again are we talking about here?
We served 170 students.
District-wide?
Well, in those 3 buildings.
From 3rd to 5th grade?
Through kindergarten to 5th grade.
Kindergarten through 5th?
Yeah, right. But we don't use this MAP assessment at
For-
the lower
from
grades
K
yet.
to
So-
second.
Right. So I wanted to, this is our first year, and it's an assessment that measures growth. I wanted to use it as, look at it, because it's going to be a very key assessment for us in the future. And so
Okay.
I thought this would be a good place to take a look at it.
I said that was my last question, but one more question. As far as the Title I money for
Yes.
tutoring,
Uh-huh.
it is only for up to the 6th grade, not the middle school, not the high school.
Correct. It's only for Balmoral, Crete, and Talala
It's these
students.
three
Title I
buildings,
schools. These three.
the
those
ones
Title I.
that are in status.
Correct.
So that's why, because they're in status, they have access to this program.
That's not good.
And that's per state.
It's per NCLB.
Yes, NCLB. Okay. Student Affairs, Mrs. Spence.
We had 2 Freedom of Information requests. First one from Ms. Tammy Burnham. The request was for the total cost our attorney has billed us to help settle the teacher contract. The status, an electronic response was sent on July 7th containing the requested information. The second one was also from Ms. Tammy Burnham. Electronic request received on June 19th for the total number of homeless students per school year from 2005 to 2006 until 2007-2008. The total student enrollment by year from 2005 to 2006 school year until present. Residency violation disenrollments from 2005-2006 school year until 2008-2009 school year, as well as how many per year were disenrolled. And then finally, confirmation of what year we employed a residency officer starting in 2005-2006 school year to present. The status was pursuant to Section 3D of the Illinois Freedom of Information Act. I extended the deadline to respond by an additional 5 business days. However, this request has been filled. The next item is a report on McKinney-Vento. The intent of this report is to provide clarifying information on the McKinney-Vento Homeless Education Act. The Homeless Act, while thoroughly written, can often be misunderstood. The report is provided for your review. However, for this evening's presentation, I will highlight some important points under each heading. McKinney-Vento is a federal law that was created to ensure the rights of homeless and unaccompanied youth. Since 1987, the law has been reauthorized 3 times, each time with stronger, more specific language, including requirements for immediate enrollment, school stability, and academic support. In 1990, the law was amended to include an increased intolerance for any barriers. We are required to look beyond residency and remove as many educational barriers as possible, including transportation. The law was reauthorized again in 2001-2002 to include a mandatory homeless liaison for each school district. So how is homeless defined? Homeless is defined as individuals who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. Fixed as in not subject to change or fluctuating, regular as in normal, standard, and consistent, and then adequate as in lawfully and reasonably sufficient. If one or more of these criteria is missing, the student qualifies as being homeless. Homeless includes children and youth who are sharing the housing of other persons due to loss of housing, economic hardship, living in motels or hotels, emergency or transitional shelters, children who have a primary nighttime residence that is not designed for regular sleeping for human beings, living in cars or parks, or migratory children. Homeless also includes unaccompanied youth, a student who is not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. It is important to keep in mind that the reason for the lost housing is not defined in the law and can include a wide range of catalysts such as unpaid rent or mortgage payments on the part of the family or the landlord. Additionally, there is no time limit on homelessness. As long as the student fits the definition of lacking a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime resident, the student is considered eligible. When determining placement options for homeless students, under the McKinney-Vento Act, students have two placement options: the school of origin or the school that other students who live in that attendance area are eligible to attend. So the school of origin is defined as the school the child attended when permanently housed or the school in which the child was last enrolled. A student may have attended another school since becoming homeless. This would mean then that the student would actually have three options for school selection: the local attendance area school, the school the student attended prior to becoming homeless, or the school the student attended most recently. The law also addresses how long a student is eligible to attend the school of origin. A homeless student may attend a school of origin for the entire duration of the homelessness or until the end of any school year in which the student becomes permanently housed. In determining the best school for a homeless child to attend, the McKinney-Vento Act states that to the extent feasible, a school district must educate a homeless child in the school of origin unless doing so is contrary to the wishes of the parent or guardian. The next heading, transportation. One of the most common barriers for homeless students is transportation. The McKinney-Vento Act requires that we have a policy in place that ensures transportation is provided at the request of the parent or guardian to and from the school of origin. The homeless liaison is required to ensure that the parent or guardian is fully informed of all transportation services, including transportation to the school of origin, and assist in accessing transportation to the school that is selected. In putting together this report, I consulted with some key individuals, namely our Regional Office of Education in Will County. I was advised that the vast majority of disputes regarding McKinney-Vento are a result of a misunderstanding of the intent of the law. The law is written, designed, and intended to protect the rights of the student and not necessarily of the district. Our actions and responses then must reflect that we are doing what is best for the student. The law is specific and clear in defining the requirements for how homeless students are to be treated, attended to, as well as what services are to be offered. When disputes do arise, if there is any part of our argument that violates any portion of the law, then our dispute is not supported. The requirements as defined are also not debatable. A frequently heard complaint is that transient or migratory students often enter the school district with academic deficiencies, which clearly can happen. But as stated earlier, McKinney-Vento requires not just immediate enrollment, but also that we provide academic support. Therefore, we are required to work to get the student up to speed academically. The last portion of the report includes a general list of do's and don'ts that will help ensure that we remain in compliance. The list is taken directly from the National Center for Homeless Education. The first one, even in the case of a dispute over qualifications, we are required to immediately admit the student to the school in which enrollment is sought, pending resolution of the dispute. Do use only school staff trained on the McKinney-Vento Act. Do collaborate with neighboring school district liaisons. Do contact previous schools to determine if the student was identified as homeless while attending that school. We are cautioned, though, that this is to be done with sensitivity and respect to confidentiality and not maliciously or intrusively. And then do talk with parents and youth about their situations, focusing on basic questions and using care and sensitivity. Now on to the don't list. We are advised against contacting landlords or housing agencies to conduct investigations about a student or family as it violates the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. Don't conduct surveillance of students or families, such as following them, observing them from outside their residences, or talking to neighbors about their living situations. Don't use police officers for home visits. Don't require documents like eviction notices, utility bills, occupancy permits, or notarized letters. And finally, don't force caregivers to obtain legal custody or guardianship. The McKinney-Vento Act requires the immediate enrollment of unaccompanied youth, so legal custody or guardianship cannot be a prerequisite. Additional information can be found on the Illinois State Board of Education website, the National Center for Homeless Education website, as well as our Crete Monee School District website under Student Affairs McKinney-Vento.
Thank you.
Thank you
for that thorough report. That was very needed.
Madam President?
Yes.
I asked Ms. Spence to do this report. I wanted to make sure that all information that we could get out about this was available. As a school district, the least we're going to do is follow the law. That's just what we're going to do. And we needed to make sure that this was as clear as possible. There's not a whole lot of questions that we have on the McKinney-Vento Act, so I'm not sure how many questions we'd have for her that she'd be able to answer. This is just the act. This is what we have to follow. And I thank you for that thorough report.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on into our business meeting for consent agenda approval. I do have a concern with an item on the consent agenda, the personnel report. To my understanding, previous administration made recommendations, but these recommendations do need to be thoroughly looked at by the Board of Education. So I want to make a motion to remove the personnel report from the consent agenda.
So move.
Moved by Mr. Brown,
Second.
second by Mr. Anderson. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Anderson,
Second.
second by Mrs. Stockton. Secretary, please call the roll. Oh, I'm sorry. Any questions? I'm sorry. Questions or comments? Okay. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye. Yes.
Mr. Heisel?
Aye.
Mr. Teray?
Aye.
And Mr. Brown?
Aye.
And Mrs. Stockton?
Aye.
Secretary's aye. Dr. Hall?
Aye. Okay, now to our business. Dr. Ann Williams.
Good evening. Included in your packet is a summary of the tentative budget along with supporting documentation, including cost center detail and a revenue analysis provided by PMA Financial. Highlights of the tentative budget are as follows. Our operating revenue is estimated at $60.1 million, which is an increase of 4.2% over the prior year. It's important to note that as we look at revenue, general state aid is prorated to 89% for all school districts in the state of Illinois. That means that the district will lose roughly $1.2 million this year alone due to the state's inability to fully fund that revenue source. Expenditures for operating funds are estimated at $63 million roughly, which is a 2.4% increase over the prior year. That includes salary and benefits, which total an increase of 2.7%, and supplies, materials, purchase services, things of that nature. We're estimating an increase that is in line with inflation of 1.7%. In addition to our operating expenditures, we have non-operating expenditures totaling another $12.3 million. That consists of bond and interest payments and $1 million for capital projects that are planned for this summer and are already in progress. In summary, our total expenditures for the tentative budget are estimated at $75.3 million, which is a 4.4% increase over the prior year's expenditures. Now, it's important to note that this is a tentative budget and that I will be receiving information to update the budget between now and September from the state as well as the federal government. We will also be implementing any changes to the expenditures. I know there have been some personnel changes, so we'll need to make those changes as well. As required by law, the tentative budget will be placed on display for 30 days or minimum of 30 days, prior to the recommendation to adopt the budget in September. Today, we are looking for a recommendation. We are making a recommendation, rather, to adopt the tentative budget by resolution and approval to set the required public hearing for September 16th and issue public notice accordingly. This concludes my report, and I'll be happy to address any questions that you might have at this time.
Well, Dr. Williamson, thank you for reporting and giving that executive summary, as I call it. Again, this is a tentative budget, and I did ask Dr. Williams that there's basically about 4 or 5 components that I think we can firm up to be better at, and that has an effect on our budget. And one of those components is average student attendance. That has a direct impact on our budget. Another one is injuries, workman comp. We took a big hit on that this upcoming year. And utilities, just how we function utility-wise. And there was one other, you recall?
I do not
ADA,
recall.
workman comp, utilities, and I think it was one more. But we're going to talk more about it with the board and try to firm up this budget as best we could, go back and revisit each line item. And I really appreciate the young lady who came up and discussed the issue on how we can better serve the district financially with the registration. So those are things the board definitely like to hear. We don't have all the answers. We are a community. So moving forward, we're going to firm up this budget. It has the word tentative. Okay, thank you.
Can I have a motion to approve the tentative budget for fiscal year 15?
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Heisel.
Second.
Second by Mr. Teray. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stockton?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Teray?
Aye.
And Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Heisel?
Aye.
Secretary's aye. Dr. Hall?
Aye. Okay. Any old business?
Yes. I guess I don't know if this is under old or new, but we discussed having a survey at registration for uniforms. Did that go anywhere?
No, it's not in the, oh gosh, sorry. It's not, we discussed having a, where is she? Oh, having discussion with, I'm sorry, with Mrs. Nash, but we did not complete it in time. So at this point, we're working on a variety, maybe, what did we say, 2 questions that we'll pose at the upcoming, parent-teacher conferences and other events, such as the curriculum nights, like we did with the Your Voice Counts. Mike? You hear me?
Yeah, I heard you. Okay. I was just hoping we'd get it out at registration to get a feel for what the community felt on adopting a uniform policy at their schools. Okay.
Okay, new business. We do need to set a couple of meeting dates. I also want to announce the Cinderella fundraiser preview ball that will be taking place Tuesday, July 22nd, right here in our auditorium at the high school. It is at 6 o'clock p.m. I believe you can get more information about that online. Also, we have scheduled our next board meeting in August, I believe is the 19th. Yes, it is Tuesday, August 19th. Prior to our board meeting at 5 o'clock p.m., we will be having a formal reception for our new superintendent. So we want to put that out there. We will also be getting that information out. It will be on the website as well. Okay, committee dates. Personnel meeting we need to set.
Well, can we
We
do
can
need-
hold off on
What
that.
did we decide on the special meeting? We were not able to convene a quorum.
Oh, we know we need to do, yeah.
We are.
We're going to
Okay.
try to. We're going to wait on the personnel meeting because Mr. Neal is not here. So we'll get that when he comes. Before August 15th?
We'll get it up tomorrow. That gives us 2 weeks.
31st is fine.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have 2 weeks of information posted on the website. So we'll get it up tomorrow and we should be fine.
Is that enough time?
Hold it now. Let's make sure we understand. We're talking about the waiver for the physical education.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not. So if we have a special meeting on July 31st, that'll give us 2 weeks.
Right.
That,
It
okay.
must be
But you said
posted.
tomorrow. You said
We'll
She
put
has,
it up
she's
tomorrow.
going to post it. It has to be posted at least
tomorrow.
2 weeks prior
The
to.
notification has to be on the district website for
2 weeks
14 days.
before it's approved.
Yes.
So tomorrow's the 16th.
Oh, the notice
Notice
of
of
the
the
meeting
hearing.
because
Yeah, notice
because
of the
we
hearing.
had previously posted it, right?
Yes.
But we was not able to have a quorum to vote on.
Right,
it. Okay.
right.
Okay, so we're going to do it tomorrow.
do it tomorrow.
Post it. Have a special meeting on July 31st, and vote on it and approve it before August 15th.
Correct.
So board members, July 31st, special meeting.
What time? What time and where?
Who's available on that date, and we can determine the time.
I won't be there.
So Tom won't be there?
No, I'll
Yeah,
be on
just
the
need a
Rhine River.
quorum.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
At evening or morning?
Evening.
Evening.
You guys are
It
working?
is Thursday. It's a Thursday. Evening, morning? No.
I'm
Let's
rolling
do
the dice.
evening.
Evening?
Let's do evening.
Midnight, that's good.
Midnight.
1
I don't
o'clock in
think
the
so.
morning, I'm available.
Okay, July 31st, 6:30 p.m. Mr. Cunningham?
Yes. I will be there.
Okay. Okay, policy. Are we setting a meeting?
I don't know. Haven't heard a word.
15th, Dr. Hall.
15th of August?
Yeah. I'm sorry,
Policy.
the 14th.
Okay.
Thursday, the 14th.
Policy Thursday, August 14th, 6:30?
Mhm.
Okay. Finance.
Tomorrow.
Mine's tomorrow.
Before yours. We have a lot to talk about, so the sooner the better. The first week in August. What's a good time? Usually we have it like the first Wednesday of the month, the 6th, if that's okay.
That's fine with me.
Okay, 6:30, August 6th, Wednesday.
I'm going to go ahead and schedule the personnel meeting. If Mr. Neal, if it's a conflict, he can, let us know. So let's go for let's see, Friday, Thursday the 7th. Yeah, that's fine. How about Thursday, August 7th, Personnel Committee members?
Okay.
Mr. Teray, okay? 8:30? Tom, you good?
That's okay. I'll be back.
Okay. Everybody hear that? Personnel, August 7th, 8:30.
Take good notes.
Reckons you do it. Did a good job.
All right, we have scheduled all of our meetings. Can I have a motion to adjourn at,
Hold on, did you get education meeting? We have one that's from this month. What about? We typically
wanna
don't
do
have
that
it
in
once a
August?
month, but I'm just
I'd
saying.
rather
do we?
wait.
Just
I think we
Laura?
should wait until
Yeah.
after registration.
right after every,
Okay, just
we can
to
do it in
make sure.
September maybe.
Okay.
Okay. So, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting at 7:37 PM?
gotta
I
be a
believe it's a
record.
record.
Yeah. Move. We just be finishing up public comments at this time.
Do that for
Moved by Mr. Heisel.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Stock. They want to go on the record as being the ones that moved by Mr. Heisel, second by Mrs. Stockton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Okay, we are adjourned.
Oh, no, nay. I'm sorry. I'm just excited here. All ayes, no nays.
Okay.
Okay, this is the standard, Mr. Cunningham. From
This is it.
Your responsibility to make sure all meetings.
Go home and enjoy our families.
Very good. My heart is beating full. Oh, how am I? These are new laws?